Good evening. This is Bible Answers, and we're going to be looking at least the first part of John chapter 13 tonight. And as usual, this is brought to you by the North Columbus Church of Christ located in Columbus, Mississippi. And we've been working our way through the book of John for some time now. And all of our verses will be on the screen. If you got any questions or comments, if you're watching this live and you have a question or comment, feel free to leave those. I'll try to respond to them. Also, we are putting these videos on YouTube, and so our YouTube page is North Columbus Church of Christ. There you can find, you can find all of our previous videos that we have done, and subscribe to our channel, and you'll be notified when new videos have been uploaded. And so, again, we've been looking at John. We're in John chapter 13. In John chapter 12, we see where Jesus has made his way into Jerusalem. There's a lot of people that are happy. They have seen Jesus or have heard Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. And so there's a lot of people that believe, even of those that are the rulers, the Pharisees, that they're believing. There's some that believe, but they won't confess him. They won't make it known publicly. But we see where a lot of people are turning to Jesus, but there's also a lot that are that they're just dead set against him. And so this takes us into John chapter 13. So he's in Jerusalem, and so it says, now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come that he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And supper being ended, the devil, having already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, rose from supper and laid aside his garments, took a towel, and girded himself. So we see, so the time for Jesus, as it's put here, that he should depart. So this is closer to his death. That it's getting close. So Jesus knows this. These things are not unknown or coming to a shock. He knows the plan. What's going to happen to him, and what is the result of those things as well. And so he knows the time is coming. And so there we see when the supper is ended. Notice what's going on. It says that the devil has already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot to betray Jesus. And so there's already a setup going on. And of course, if you're familiar with this, with the narrative here, you know what's happening. And we see where Judas is already, as we see here, the devil has already put it into his heart that he is going to betray Jesus. But again, Jesus knows this. He knows that the Father had given him all things into his hands. He had come from God. He was going to God. His time on earth is getting close to an end, close to an end, and he's going to God. But we see that he's he does something unusual here. It says that he lays aside his garments, he took a towel, and he girds himself. And then that takes us into the next passages here. So again, he knows that that the time is close. But notice what he does, and knowing that Judas is about to betray him, and that takes us into verses 5 through 9. It says, after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. Then he came to Simon Peter, and Peter said to him, Lord, are you washing my feet? Jesus answered and said to him, what I am doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. And so we see where Jesus here. So again, the context here is, I think, is interesting with what's fixing to happen. But Jesus here is he's and we'll see later on here that he's using this to teach the disciples something here, and so he's washing their feet. And Peter here, he's questioning him. Jesus says that look, you don't understand. Later, you're going to know. You're going to know why I do these things. And we see where Peter, and I think what Peter here is saying is I think it's legitimate in his thinking. And he's saying Jesus shouldn't be doing this for me. This is a very lowly, frankly, it seems kind of humiliating. These things would be left to the lowly servants to be doing this, to wash someone's feet. And so naturally, Peter would not want him to do that. And so Jesus tells him, he says, if I don't wash you, you have no part with me. And I think what he's saying here is basically kind of being in fellowship with him, of letting Jesus complete his task, and that letting Jesus continue on his mission and being in fellowship with him. And so he finally gets it in Simon's head that he's saying, if I don't wash you, you're not going to have any part with me. But then we see where, he goes from you shouldn't wash my feet to well, if this is the case, you need to wash everything, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. And he wants to be Peter doesn't understand what's really going on, but he finally gets it, and he said, I want to be, if this is what it takes to be with you, well, then you need to wash everything. I want my hands and my head as well. And so, interesting conversation that's happening between Jesus and Peter here. And again, I don't think Peter quite understands exactly what's happening, but we'll see it cleared up. What the point here that Jesus is trying to make with them. And in verses 10 through 17, it says, Jesus said to him, he who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew who would betray him. Therefore he said, you are not all clean. So when he had washed their feet, taken his garments, and set down again, he said to them, Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I've given you an example that you should do as I've done to you. Most assuredly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. And so he's basically telling them, so he's Lord. He says, you called me teacher and Lord. I'm in charge of you. And yet we see here that he's washing their feet. And so he's using this as an example. If I have washed your feet, then you ought to wash one another's feet. Now, why is he saying this? Is he saying, you need to spend time every day literally washing other people's feet? I don't think this is what he's saying. If you want to wash someone's feet, that's fine. But I think what he's saying here is Jesus, has authority, and yet he's humbling himself. And so he says that you should do as I have done to you. I'm humbling myself when I don't have to, and you should do the same. He says, most assuredly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master. So if the Lord is doing this, how much more should his servants do that as well? And so, again, we see the humility of Jesus, not with this, but in other examples, ultimately through his death. And yet he's telling them to pay attention to this. And just like what Jesus told Peter, you don't know what I'm doing now. You don't understand what I'm doing now, but later you will. And so he's telling them, this is you're going to have to humble yourselves. And even then, he tells him why I'm doing these things. And I think even after Christ's death, seeing what they were going to go through, maybe will allow Peter to understand better what Jesus meant by those things. So verses 18 through 22 says, I do not speak concerning all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but that the scripture may be fulfilled. He who eats bread with me has lifted up his heel against me. Now I tell you before it comes, that when it does come to pass, you may believe that I am he. Most assuredly I say to you, he who receives whomever I send receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me. When Jesus had said these things, he was troubled in spirit, and testified and said, most assuredly I say to you, one of you will betray me. Then the disciples looked at one another, perplexed about whom he spoke. And so he's saying these things, but he, again, in the meantime, he realizes that Judas is going to betray him, and he knows Judas is going to betray him. And he's saying, there's someone here, as he uses this scripture, he who eats bread with me has lifted up his heel against me. Even this person has been with me this entire time, have seen all of these things. Now remember also, Judas went and performed miracles himself when Jesus sent out the disciples. And so he's with them, he's doing these things, he's seeing what Jesus is saying and doing, and yet we still see where he's going to betray him. And so he's telling them this doesn't seem like the disciples quite understand exactly what he's saying, but he says later on, again, you're going to believe, you're going to believe in me. You're going to believe that I am he by speaking these things. And so he goes on, he says, he who receives whomever I send receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me. So you think about him maybe sending out the apostles, or at this time they would be the disciples. And he says, if those are sent out, if they receive the apostles, they're ultimately receiving that word. They're receiving Jesus, and if they're receiving Jesus, they're receiving God. And previously, Jesus had made these statements. I believe in the last chapter, he said basically the same thing, that if you believe me, or believing my word, you're believing in God as well. And if you're rejecting these things, you're rejecting God the Father as well. And so he is repeating this same thought here, that if they're receiving you, they're receiving Christ, and therefore they're receiving God the Father as well. And so if they're rejecting one, they're rejecting the other two as well. And so again, he says that there's going to be one of them that betrays him. Okay, and so he was troubled in spirit, and then he says he's saying one of you are going to betray me, and kind of what you would expect is once he says that, and once it's kind of clear to what he's saying, well, then the disciples are, they're wondering, they're looking at one another, trying to figure out why does he say such things. Verses 23 through 27. I'm getting tongue-tied here. It says, now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples, whom Jesus loved. Simon Peter therefore motioned to him to ask who it was of whom he spoke. Then leaning back on Jesus' breast, he said to him, Lord, who is it? Jesus answered, it is he, to whom I shall give a piece of bread when I have dipped it. And having dipped the bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. Now, after the piece of bread, Satan entered him. Then Jesus said to him, what you do, do quickly. And so we see they ask him who it's going to be. Jesus says, whoever I give this piece of bread to, it's going to be him. He gives it to Judas. And so we see that once Judas receives this, it says that Satan enters him. And it's really interesting. I don't know exactly how all this happens, whether this is something like, what we see in the book of Job, in which Satan is really directly, there's these, I guess you would call them supernatural things that happen, that Satan gets to happen to kind of turn Job against God, or is this more subtle? Is so I don't know exactly what's all that's being entailed here, but we see regardless of that, that now at this point, as John puts it, Satan enters him. That Judas has made up his mind that he's going to betray Jesus. And what Jesus here says, he says, what you do quickly. And so that's where we're going to end. And later on, we'll see what Judas is going to do. Is he going to betray Jesus? And so we'll find out at the next show. And so we see, and I think it's real interesting here with Jesus. He knows how this is all going to pan out for him, and yet he's willing to still show care for these people. We know Judas, and of course I said that we'll find out later if he's going to betray him. I think we all know what's going to happen. Judas is going to betray Jesus, and but yet he still showed this care for Judas in the midst of all of these things. He doesn't just kick him out or run him out, knowing that this is what's fixing to happen. He still cares for all those, even with the others that will deny him later on after his death. And so, really quite fascinating, I think, and it's a good point for us is how we interact with others, and even with those that do us wrong. I think there's a good example here with Jesus and how he interacts with them. And so, again, if there's any comments or questions, feel free to leave that. We'll just keep on, next show, we'll just keep on working our way through John 13, and eventually, Lord willing, we'll finish the book of John. And so I hope this has been useful for y'all. And until next time, I hope that you all have a good day and a good rest of the week. Thanks.